Hello, beautiful beings. So, I felt like I wanted to make a video this evening about connection, about friendship and relationships. I feel that this is quite an important theme for this year of 2018. That on this awakening journey, we have been shaken about, and for quite a while now, some of us have really felt like we've needed that time in isolation to do some really deep soul searching, to really let go of some things and to face our biggest fears. And one of those fears, one of our greatest things that we're afraid of in life is being alone, is this fear of dying alone. But even just not having that authentic connection. And unfortunately, in society at the moment, that is playing out on a global scale. Um, hu- um, Humanity and society, particularly Western society, is just there's an epidemic of loneliness, an epidemic of disconnection from each other, um, relationships that are causing more suffering to each other than love and connection. So we deeply, deeply want and remember from somewhere within us that we need this connection, that we want this deep connection with another, that helps each other to grow, that is light-hearted and joyful. And yet, what society has conditioned into us and taught us throughout our lives, through the movies, through the way that our society is set up, the way that we live our lives, the way that we construct relationships, all of it has disconnected us from each other to a point where we remember so deeply that we have lived in other ways that have felt much more connected, much more nurturing, much more supportive, and yet we feel broken as a society, that we don't know how to heal that, how to come back to that state of connection again, almost like when tribes were living together and people were much more interconnected as a society. So it's ironic that as we become more financially abundant, we actually become less abundant in love and connection and friendship. If you just look at like Western society, the way that mostly we all bond with each other is through alcohol, and then there are a lot of disagreements and arguments on the streets and things like that. So we seek these remedies to help us connect with each other, to make it less painful, and they also cause us more trouble than they're worth. But this year, I feel, is a time for us to really drop our barriers and have the courage to connect with each other in a much more authentic way. And I think to do that in some ways is first to learn authentic boundaries between giving and receiving, to know that you are respected, to know that you can trust people. And I think we need some more lightheartedness and celebration and joy. We hold the weight of the world on our shoulders at times, and we get so engrossed in our problems that actually you just need to let go sometimes. I remember when I was younger and I was a teenager, and the punk rock era, the rock era. I remember all of my friends and I, like 7 of my friends, we'd all sit in my room, we'd all sit on my bed, and we'd chat and hang out with each other, and sometimes just like leaning on each other, just chatting to each other, and it just felt so loving. And we'd all hug each other goodbye, and even the men in the group, these, tall grown men wearing leather jackets, would all hug each other goodbye. There was no ego involved. It was just very loving. And I was just feeling to myself, when have we lost that feeling as a teenager of connecting with each other as a group, as a tribe, and then as we get older, we feel that we need to band off into these little relationship tribes that actually isolate us from each other. It's ironic, really. We feel like to have deep love and connection, we can't have that deep loving friendship, whereas I really feel like we can have it all. We need to remember that. So this year for me, I think, has been a crash course in loneliness, in isolation, that actually what I was remembering yesterday was the movie Into the Wild, that he goes out into Alaska by himself, completely isolated, and does this soul searching. And it's only when he's dying that he has this deep connection with God. And in that moment, he recognizes what is important in life is connection with his friends and family, is love, is those small moments where people support you. And it's ironic that sometimes it takes us being in complete isolation to remember what's important, really, to then come back to each other in a more healed state, to be able to give more to other people. So that's what I'm hoping to nurture this year, really, is to see the best in people, to support people, and to allow myself to do what's best for me, to create loving, supportive, trusting friendships. So I'm just going to read a poem that I wrote a few days ago that just illustrates that. It says, why must we walk alone on this journey? Can we not walk hand in hand in the remembrance of our oneness? As children that love unconditionally, can we not remember our inner child that gives so freely, with no expectations of the future, but only a light-heartedness, a joyfulness in the present, knowing that in this moment that we are creating, in this moment is where our adventures begin, waiting for us to take the next step forwards? Can we not do it together, in this shared remembrance that we belong to something greater, a community, a network of interconnectedness? Can we not learn to walk together as love in motion, putting our differences aside as we share the vision, transpired into inspired action, to bring peace to a world that is ready to come home, to the heaven that it has always been? Can we learn to appreciate it with new eyes to see that we have been given the gift of this creation to exist within? So just as I was reading that, I just remembered I went to Dunster Castle the other day, which is an incredibly beautiful place in Dorset, Devon actually, and I was just sat on a bench in a National Trust place looking over this beautiful view, and this young boy just ran up and sat on the bench that I was on, and just kind of stared at me for a minute and then just looked away. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you hiding from your parents?" And he just, looked at me shyly and smiled and then ran off. And it's just a reminder of animals and children are so deeply, unconditionally loving. They don't have those boundaries, those masks that have been taught to us. We've been taught to protect ourselves. So we need to really slowly melt away those barriers. And in some ways, as we grow up and we become sexually attracted to each other and we want to get into relationships and things like that, that actually causes a lot of dynamics that make it really difficult for us to just authentically, lovingly, innocently, and purely connect with one another as the souls that we are, rather than trying to play games, try and make this a relationship, try and make my ego feel better because they want me or I want them, and all of these things. If it is an authentic, loving, purely beautiful connection, it will happen naturally, it will unfold. You don't need to do anything. We've been taught these little ways of pushing and pulling that we need to just drop and just let ourselves just come into open-hearted connection with one another. And another moment that I just remembered was the other day, that when I was talking about loneliness, is that when I'm at work, I'm surrounded by people, hundreds of people all the time, but I'm just giving. I'm so busy that I'm rarely able to really make a deep, authentic, loving connection with people, which is what I want to do more than anything. It's why I have come into the career that I'm in, is to be nurturing and loving and caring. And I just had a moment the other day where I was just doing what I'm doing as a nurse, doing some medications or putting up different procedures and things. And this man who had a brain injury that barely has any movement, is almost paralysed, he just took my hand and, started sort of stroking my hand really kind of innocently and lovingly. And I just looked at him and I was like, "Are you giving me a massage? That's really nice, thank you." And it was just in that moment that I just thought, this man has no movement, no life at the moment, apart from us, what we are doing to him all the time. And yet, in some ways, he almost knew what I needed, that he could feel my loneliness, my heartbreak, that he was just holding my hand, that he probably was wanting support himself, but actually he was healing me. So it's funny that we put on these professional barriers and things of wanting to support others, but actually what we're doing is coming into this interconnectedness where we are healing each other, where they are teaching us as much as we are looking after them. So no matter how hard my job is at times, it still teaches me some beautiful lessons on how to authentically relate to people, and sometimes where I'm closing myself off, where I'm not giving enough. So lots of love, beautiful people, and I hope that this year brings you much joyful interconnection and love, much beauty, much kindness, much sweet, innocent, joyful, loving oneness with yourself and with other people. So lots of love.